New York, the heat.
This is Klopfanstein, and we're in the hot seat on a Media Monday.
Hi everybody, welcome to the hot seat on this Media Monday. My guest today is Luke Radel, and Luke has been an independent journalist for many years. He also is beginning his second year as a student at Newhouse at Syracuse University and studying journalism. And he just finished this morning, I think, the coolest summer job I think a person can have around here. You are on-air reporter and anchor for WKTV Newschannel 2.
Exactly. It was so much fun. I hate to correct the host because the host is never wrong, but this is actually, I'm going to my third year now, which is funny because the
Really?
last
It's your
time...
third year? I thought it was your second year.
Third year. The
Wow,
last time you
goes by
interviewed me...
fast.
I know. Last time you interviewed me, it was my junior year of high school for a profile you did of me.
That's right.
And the Rome Sentinel and the Clinton Record, and now
That's
it's my
right.
junior year in college, so a lot
Wow.
has changed in the past 4 years. But yeah, no, I had a really great summer job, and looking forward to talking to you
So
about it.
Luke, I gotta ask. So, what's it like to anchor News Channel 2,
Oh my
WKTV News?
Listen, when they first showed me the open that had, and now the news with Luke Radel with the NBC chimes, I mean, seriously, I didn't think my head would fit into the studio. But no, it was really incredible. Those people were so amazing. They were so nice to work with. Jason Powlis was my night crew guy. Bill Cardis as well on weather, and then Spencer Davidson on sports. Kristen Copeland was there in the daytime with us. But everybody, Steve McMurray's general manager, and he's actually graduated from the Newhouse School at Syracuse.
Oh, really?
So it's all
Great.
part of, we call it Newhouse Mafia.
Yeah, right.
Everybody who graduates from Newhouse, we look out for each other, and he was the one, I reached out, I was like, hey, I'm looking for a job this summer, what do you think you can do? I wasn't expecting, most people don't usually get on air for their,
I was going to say, it's
going
pretty,
to their junior
cool.
in college, let
Yeah.
alone, reporting, let alone anchoring
Yeah.
the evening news, and I got to anchor every show except for the noon and the 5 o'clock, so that was a lot of fun. I did.
Wow.
This morning was my first time doing the morning shift, had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, so
what
we're running
time
on overtime
does that
now.
show start? The morning
Show starts at 5 in the morning.
So you got to get up at 3. What
Yeah.
time do you show up for work? If
Up
you're
at 3, there at 4, but it's up on Smith Hill, so it takes about 25 minutes to get up there, at least
Yeah.
in my house.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get into the suit and the whole get up, and then get up there around 4.
What do you do when you get there? If you're
Yeah,
gonna do the morning
so
show?
some of the time it's already produced for you. A lot of times up there, especially because we're a little short staffed these days, as everywhere is,
Yeah.
you're anchoring and producing. Today I was grateful. Katrina Smith was my producer, so she was able to produce last night into the morning
So
show.
what did she do as your producer?
Yeah, so she goes through and stacks out all the stories for the show. So
Okay.
the show is launched into different blocks. So the first block is the A block, second block is the B block, all the way down.
And what's the
to end
difference
of
for the blocks? Is that like the half-hour time slot? Or is
So
that
the
part of
blocks,
half-hour slot?
the blocks get you to a commercial break, and
Okay.
so
So you have 3 blocks before every commercial break.
so no, there's one block before every commercial break.
Oh, I see.
And so
block commercial.
when the A block is done, there's 2 minutes of commercials, then B block, then 2 more minutes of commercials, then C block, then 2 more minutes of commercials.
Okay.
Usually, you start off in your A block, especially in the morning, you start with weather, because that's what everybody wants. They want to see weather every 10 minutes. And then A block, you put your top stories, so your biggest news of the day. You try and have a lot of video, a lot of sound, which is going out and interviewing people in the community.
And a lot of that would probably be stories from the day before. They have already been produced.
For the overnight, yeah.
Yeah,
For the
'cause
overnight,
not
just
much
because.
happens in the
Yeah, right.
overnight.
Hopefully not much is happening in the middle of the
Yeah.
night. We've had a couple of breaking stories overnight, but hopefully most of the time there's usually stuff that we can use from the day prior, and then also looking ahead to what's happening today. So this
Yeah.
morning, we previewed the funeral of Elizabeth Gerling, the principal of Columbus, who was murdered by her boyfriend.
Tonight,
Yeah, so she had the funeral was 10:30, and then there's a candlelight vigil in Proctor Park. So we were previewing that because that's always the big thing is, right, so I'm getting ready to go out the door. How am I planning for my day? Oh, okay, this is the event that's happening tonight in Proctor Park. Maybe I'll put that on my calendar. So we had a couple traffic alerts, things of that nature. Once you get into the B block, those are sometimes you're focusing on more national stories, and so you're getting into, I think this morning we had ceasefire talks in the Israel-Hamas war, and then by C block you're back at weather, and that's kind of your full 3-minute forecast. And then you're just kind of stacking all the way down that way. The interesting thing about the morning show, so it starts at 5 in the morning, ends at 7 when the Today Show and the CBS Mornings
it's
picks
a
it up.
2-hour block.
2-hour show, which is
Probably
a pretty
a lot
long
of it's
time.
repeated, I would think. Like,
So
you have
the
like
5 and the 6 o'clock hour are repeated. Not to pull back the curtain on anything here, but
Right. No, it makes sense.
Oh yeah, what
How
ends
much
up
is gonna
happening
happen at
though,
5 in the morning?
so in your 5 and 6 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
you're getting the most people at the top of the show at 5 o'clock because that's when everybody's tuning into the news and they watch kind of sequentially and then
The
the
headlines
brought toward the end.
yeah.
In the morning, everybody's waking up, so actually the most watched part of the show is the end.
Wow.
And so that 6:30 half hour is when everybody starts tuning in and is getting ready to start their day. So it's a very interesting show. It's my first time. It was my first time doing it today. I'm still a little sleepy from it. I'll be completely honest. I got used to doing the night shift there for a while. Then obviously I had a week in Chicago for the conventions where I also didn't get a lot of sleep. But I had a lot of fun. It was great. Absolutely. Yeah, no,
so
it was fun.
what happens like when you got there today to do the morning show? And you get there, and Katrina's already there. Has it produced the segment?
She did a lot of it either the night before, or you do it from home as well, which is nice. But a lot of it was already produced. There were a couple of things. So we take some packages from NBC, the national affiliate. They send down stuff for local stations, for their local stations. And so there's a reporter, Alice Barr, who brings down called a Race for the White House package every morning at 4:30ish. And so she sent down her package this morning about how Trump is dodging debates. So I have to take that, cut that, and put that into the show. It's a really incredible setup, though, because everything there is very much automated. So there's really only one person in the control room. At Citrus TV, which is our student-run station out at Syracuse, we have different people doing everything. So one person runs the video clips, one person does the graphics, one person calls the camera shots. WKTV is one guy, and it's all automated. It's really incredible the coding that goes into it. It was a really, really interesting experience in how.
So only one cameraman too in the studio?
So the cameras are all automated as well. So those are all on robotic arms and the zooms and everything. So it's all from the control room.
So the director in the controls all the cameras. In addition to having to call the shots, I assume.
Yeah. And well, the shots are pre-selected ahead of time by the producer, and so they pick which camera is going to be where. So that way, usually, if you're anchor producing, you know, okay. The story about Elizabeth Growing's coming up. I'm going to turn it to camera 3. Okay, now back to the traffic alert. I'm going to turn to camera 2. So you know where kind of the map of how the show is going to go.
For most of what you do as the anchor, you look ahead into the main camera, I assume, but then like say when whoever's in weather comes on to join you at the anchor desk, then you cut to a 2-shot and you turn.
Correct.
And are you aware of what cameras are going to be hot at the moment, so you know where to turn, what to look in?
There's a big red light, so that'll help. So it's a big red light, and usually, like I said, you're picking that before time.
So you kind of know, like at this point, when the sports guy comes down, it'll be a 2-shot, so you got to turn over and
talk to him, and you try and make it as natural as possible, right? So I try always to banter, and it sometimes requires us going a little over time, which is usually fine. We drop a story here and there, but. I like to banter, keep things a little more loose and a little more natural.
And the viewers, I'm sure, like that too, because you see more like your actual people.
Absolutely, and that's I think again one of the broader things we can talk about in the media is people want authenticity. They want people to be themselves. Doesn't always mean opinion. Sometimes it does, but they definitely want you to be authentic and to be your real self and to have a personality. And so that's what I try and bring at least a little bit of it too.
Now, what about the script itself?
Yeah.
So you get in there and the stories are laid out, probably like in a computer, kind of like we do here at the station, where it goes one to the next one.
Yeah.
When you do your intros, when you come out of this segment and you say your anchor stuff, what do you actually call that? Would that be called your script?
So that's copy. Yeah, your copy, script.
So copy is what you say as the anchor. Like, we're going to go to a report now from blank, who's at Kinsley Vigil.
Yeah, that's the copy that comes beforehand. So if you're tossing is another way of phrasing it. So
when you go to another person.
Correct.
Right?
If you're like throwing it to a reporter, so the stuff that comes before is called the toss, and then the stuff that comes after is the tag. And so you say, the toss would be, News Channel 2's Ron Klopfanstein is at the vigil for us tonight. He's reporting live. Here's Ron, and then that's the toss. And then when you toss back to me, I say that was Ron Klopfanstein in Proctor Park. Ron, thank you so much. That's the tag.
So do you write that beforehand, or do you improvise it when you're on camera?
It depends. The toss, a lot of times, is written actually by the reporter, because you know your story better than I do. Okay. A lot of times when you're the anchor. So
like the reporter might say, like, where they are following the story from, basically what's the story
and usually like the toss will include kind of a 1 to 2 sentence summary of what we're about to learn, or just setting up some necessary information, biographical information about what we're about to see.
Now, what about like the news stuff that you would say as anchor, where you're not cutting away to a reporter or to a produced story, but like you're actually saying like tonight at Proctor Park at 7 p.m. Do you write that ahead of time?
Yes. So for national stuff that comes down. A lot of that comes down from NBC, which is great because
So
they
you
have
kind
their
of
reporters
copy
that
and
are able
paste
to
the
do it.
text into
Correct,
your
for the NBC, for the
into
national
your
stuff. So like
copy.
the ceasefire in Gaza. I don't know what the latest is on the ceasefire talks in Gaza, but Ralph Sanchez, who's reporting for NBC from Tel Aviv, does, and he wrote out something for us to use, which is great. And he has video provided as well. On more local stuff, that's up to us. So that's up to us to write it, and write it in a way that is conversational for our speaking style, but also is direct and to the point and tells the story in 25 to 30 seconds, usually is the general time period that we're able to keep folks' attention for.
And do you see your copy on a teleprompter
Yes.
as you're anchoring?
Yes,
Okay.
and you have a little dial next to your seat that lets you control how fast or how slow it's going as you go back
really?
and forward. Yes,
Oh,
so
so you
you're
can slow
controlling
it down if it's
You can, yes. And I tend to read a little bit slower than some of the other anchors.
Mhm.
So that works out really nicely because you can control exactly how fast it's
Now,
going.
what would happen? Has it ever happened where the teleprompter went blank, or like there was some?
So I've had the wrong thing in the teleprompter before.
Oh,
and I've
so
had to
what
that.
did you do?
Well, this morning it was so Gary Libertor is normally the morning anchor.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff is run on templates, and so one of the templates had "Good morning, welcome to News Channel 2 at sunrise. I'm Gary Libertor." And thankfully, I didn't have a Ron Burgundy moment to say, and I'm Ron Burgundy. Yeah. I was able to self-correct, and I actually kind of turned it into a joke and said, "Oh, I guess they still haven't changed the teleprompter. They're ready for me to go." I've not had anything where the prompter has gone down. I've been in the studio at Citrus where the teleprompter has gone down. And it's
Were you
live?
live?
It's a lot of riffing and bantering. We're always live, so we're
you're
always
live.
live, and it's a lot of riffing and bantering. You never really want to try and do a news story when you're doing
I
that.
would imagine,
We
right.
also have KTV has this and Citrus has this. We have iPads that have scripts on them. So worst case scenario,
so you could always
look
look
down
at
at the
that.
iPad and
Nice,
you
I
try
see.
and keep going until.
Because I was wondering, like, you might.
Or you toss to a break.
Because in the moment, you might go blank and forget what the next story is,
I
and you
know.
really would.
And also you leave out important details, right? A lot of the stuff with news copy is making sure you're very precise and using appropriate details and including all the details you need to include and maybe leaving out some details that you didn't think were necessary. And so if you're doing that off the top of your head, then
It can be really hard,
especially
yeah.
for 2.5 hours when you're going through
I
a
can
show at
imagine. Yeah.
5 o'clock in the morning.
So I'm wondering what the process is of actually doing a story, because you know a lot of people that I talk to when I interview them, they're like, I describe the process of what I do to them, where I don't really have a deadline. I'm going to take a lot of time. I'm going to research this,
That's
and
so
like,
nice.
and it's a luxury that most people don't have.
Right.
And like I'm always explaining to people that I interview that like News Channel 2 and the OD and the Rome Sentinel, they don't have the time to spend like a month on one story that interests them. So you have to do it like where you come into work, you're assigned a story, you go get the story, you get back, you get it ready to air, it airs. Can you describe a little bit about what that process is like?
Yeah, I mean,
how do you keep up with all that?
I've had to turn stories in 25 minutes.
What does that involve?
Sweat and adrenaline, mainly. But so a lot of times we get tons of emails into the station. If you email news at WKTV.com, every single person on the news staff will get it.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, every single person on the news staff gets it.
So all the times that like PRP people like me from nonprofit groups have been emailing
every single one,
unnecessary.
every single one, every congressional office, every interest group, AARP. We get a lot of emails, but they are read. Everybody reads them.
Nice.
And so we get events in. We had one. Chuck Schumer was in Cooperstown for funding that he got for Bassett Healthcare. And so I was out there. I think the event started at 3, and our shows are at 5 and 6,
So
which is
3
never a good
PM,
time to schedule.
You're
an
in
event.
Cooperstown.
4 p.m. I'm in Cooperstown.
4 p.m.
The story needs to be on the show at 5:30.
So what did you do?
So we finished.
I'm
up
nervous
there
just
at 4.
thinking about
I know,
this.
right? So he had the press conference. He was a little late, about 20 minutes late to the press conference, but he's the Senate Majority Leader. We'll allow it. A little late to the press conference. He has his press conference. You record what he says in the press conference. You hope that he takes questions. He took my question, which I was grateful for. He answered my question. And so you take that video, and then you go over. I went over and got what they call B-roll, so video of the outside of the hospital, people walking in and out, things you can put in over.
So this
what
would be
you're
like
saying.
if you're cutting together, like say a person is talking,
Right.
and you want to take out some of what they're saying.
Yeah.
So there's not a jump cut. You go to a little for the audience.
Yep.
You go to a little B-roll, which is
Right.
kind of like background shots of the
Yep.
location or of
Right.
the people.
Basically,
the
video of the person
audience or-
not talking, right? but use
Yeah,
other
yeah.
video from the scene just to kind of set and paint the picture.
Yeah.
I never want it to be what they call it, like wallpaper video, where it's just
Right.
like there to be there.
Yeah.
You always want it to be furthering telling the story.
Kind of telling someone's story.
Exactly. And so this was about how historic this hospital was, and so I wanted to get shots of when the hospital was built and that nice kind of like dome thing that they have on the top.
Yeah.
So got a couple of videos of that, and then we did what's called a stand-up, which is I did it by myself because they call it MMJing, multimedia.
That's what
journalist.
that surprises a lot of people, that
Yeah.
you actually are your own cameraman.
Correct.
And when you're on camera, like holding the mic,
Yes.
talking into the camera, you had to set that up
There's nobody
yourself.
behind it. Yeah, which is hard, but it's an
Yeah.
art form. It really is, and that's
Right,
why
right.
it's a Bachelor of the Arts, because it is an art form to figure out how to get the shot to look correct and and figure out how to use all those buttons
And not to
novels.
have to be coached or directed.
Correct.
Or
Correct. If you're
yeah.
out there by yourself and you got one shot, and then you're back an hour to Utica. So I did a stand up.
So
which
you
is
leave
where,
Cooperstown about
Yes.
say 3:30,
Oh no, like 4:10.
about 4:10.
So about 4:10.
with a bunch of different videos, because you
Ton
have
of
video,
video.
you have your stand-up.
Yeah,
and
about
you
20
have-
minutes of video.
But in all different files too. Like you have some
Correct.
B-roll files, you have his interview.
Yeah.
What do you, when you come back, what do you do with all that?
So I come
Is it
back.
recorded in your camera?
It's on an SD card, which is
Okay.
nice. So you take the SD card out of the camera and you put it into the computer. Our computers are a little old at WKTV. Feel free to support. But yeah, our computers are a little old.
We kind of know that problem.
Exactly. It takes a little bit of time, but then we get it up into the editing software. And you really have to be, while you're recording, be very conscious of about how long he's been talking for and what kind of time codes you want to have.
So you
And
kind of have to already know in advance like what you're going to pull out.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
you really
and-
don't
and-
have the luxury of watching the whole thing all over again. And
No, you had to
Oh,
have
that
been
was
listening
good.
the first time around, right?
Yeah.
So that's what.
You
Yeah, I
kinda
don't get to
edit-
relive it.
you probably
again.
plan your edits like in your head.
Yes, and figuring out, okay, I know that's going to go at the top of the story. This is going to go in the middle.
Yeah.
This is going to go at the end. And you interview a nurse or two, and you try and weave that into the story as well. So you have not just a politician, but also people that are actually affected by it.
Right, right.
So you have that.
So you get back to the studio, you
Yeah.
loaded all these files onto your
Right.
computer, they're all there.
They're all there.
You have to make it your story. How
Stack
much
it out
time
time-wise.
do you have
At this point, I think it was 20 minutes.
to get it done?
Yes.
Wow.
Which is fun,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
find
It's
it
not
really
much
fun. It's a
time.
really fun challenge. It's not a lot of time,
Yeah.
especially because the last 10 minutes usually are exporting and transcribing.
Okay.
And so exporting is when you get it up and into the video software that's going to play in the actual show. That's all the technical back work. And then transcribing is it all needs to be in the teleprompter, because teleprompter is what shows up for closed captioning, and that's FCC. your
So
content.
you have to do that.
Correct.
I figured there was a service that
Oh,
did
no.
that for you.
Oh no!
Wow.
That costs money, Ron.
I'm
that costs money. Yeah, no.
Because on YouTube it does it for free.
It does.
I
Well,
assume
not
that
exactly.
nowadays-
You
it's not
they
always
take all your
correct,
data,
though.
Ron. So
Yeah,
they
well,
take
that's
all your
true.
data.
Yeah,
That's the cost
there's always
of
a cost.
transcribing on YouTube. We don't get any of your data at WKTV.
So you get all that done, all that edited from you were there at 3:30. You leave
Correct.
about 4. You get back to the station.
Yes, and usually the
you
story's
get
about
5:30.
2 minutes and 15 seconds long.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, because like when I first started to do this in the 90s with video, we usually
Yeah.
would assume that it was about 3 hours per 1 minute of
Yeah.
final work. So a 2-minute story would normally, like I would budget a 2-minute story for like a whole day of work. Like about,
And by the
6,
way,
7, 8 hours.
it's not my favorite package in the world, right? So if I had another 3 hours, I'm sure that package would turn out a lot better. And by the
Right.
way,
You just
I
gotta
turned
get it
another
done.
package for the 11 o'clock show that I had 6 hours to work on, and that's a better package. That's a better story. But when you're trying to get the news out there, to
Yes,
people,
of
and you're
course.
trying to show people what's being said, and I think, I thought it was a good story, but I
Yeah,
think that like
yeah.
you're trying to turn it around and you want people to see what's happening, and that's sometimes what you're left with. Sometimes a building set's on fire at 9:20 and you have a show at 10 and you've got to
You
get
gotta get back
over
up
there
and
and you got to
do that.
get to the story. So
So now when your story is approved,
Yeah.
and they send you out to do this would be the editor or the producer of the news broadcast who decides, or?
So yeah, we have the producer of the news broadcast, which is usually Kristen Copeland or Jason Powlis. They're the producers of the evening and nighttime
We
shows.
got to go to break. This
Yeah.
conversation is so great. I'm going to ask you
Of
all
course.
about that when we get back.
Sounds good.
We're going to take a short break now. I'm Ron Klopfanstein, and you're on the hot seat on a Media Monday. Back up
At Excellus Blue Cross Blue.
hot seat on a Media Monday. Hi everybody. Welcome back to the hot seat on this Media Monday. My guest today is Luke Radel, and Luke is just finished this morning. You did your last
I did.
duty as your summer job at
For now,
Newhouse
anyways.
too.
I'll be back to fill in. Don't worry.
I'm sure you will be back to film.
Yes.
And you were just back from the Democratic National Convention. You
I
also
am.
attended the Republican National Convention.
I did.
What are some of your insights, your observations?
It was really interesting because the way that the vibes shook out, I know it's a vibes election. We had, after the Republican convention, it was a month ago. I know that's like a year in political time, but
It does seem like a long time ago.
It
So
was-
older,
I
you're
know,
an older
right?
candidate.
I got there Monday. That Saturday, Donald Trump had been shot in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Sure, yeah.
And by the way, Joe Biden was still in the presidential race
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
And so Republicans were feeling really good about their chances in the election, about the way that things were going, about running against Joe Biden, about how the debate had gone on CNN back in June.
Yeah.
And so the whole convention was a big celebration of Donald Trump. And then that Sunday, I was in, it's called the CNN Politico Grill. I think you would love it. I was
I'm
there.
sure I would.
It was like every journalist and host and everything,
Wow.
politician. Ted Cruz popped in. I don't know if you love that part, but everybody was there and it was really awesome. But they were all saying the whole week that Joe Biden is going to drop out of the race and it'll probably be on Sunday. And I said, oh guys, come on. There's no way he's actually going to drop out of the race. It's been a whole month after the debate. He's no way he's doing it. And so I get back home. And I mean, the convention was exhausting, right? So I'm out, reporting on stories, and then at the grill until like 1 a.m, and waking up again at 7 to go back to the arena and the whole thing. So I was completely exhausted. Slept all day Saturday, and then we were going to lunch as a family on Sunday. And I said, you know what? I've been on my phone a whole lot this week at the convention. I've been, way too much screen time. I'm going to put my phone away for the whole Sunday.
And that's when it happened.
And that's when it happened, Ron. This is what happens when I put down my phone. And so I said, Mom and Dad, I'm never putting down my phone again. It's all screen time for me from now on. But, so that was obviously a seismic shift in the presidential race. And so now
Absolutely, yeah.
the vibes have completely shifted. And I go to
Yeah.
Chicago and everybody there is celebrating. And that's honestly all I would want. Is I don't want to go to a convention because the convention,
Where's Tom?
if Biden had stayed in, would have probably been a funeral. And the convention, if the Republican convention had been held this week, it also probably would have been a little bit of, hey, what are we doing here? Are we really going to have unmuted mics during the debate? So it was a really interesting way to look at the politics of this moment. How quickly it can turn. I think it'll turn many more times again, Ron Klopfanstein.
Now, did you go to that by yourself? Were you your own cameraman at that event too?
So I went with an amazing group of Newhouse students both times.
Okay.
We went about 10 of us in each group, paid for by Newhouse, thankfully. So I'm
nice.
about to
Wow.
fly to Chicago, my own dime hotel, plane, the whole thing. The food was from CNN, which I appreciate.
Well, that's really nice.
That
So
turned
what
out
is
nice.
CNN food like?
Oh, it's so good.
I'll bet.
Good. It was really good. Anyways, they had these fries. I don't even
Oh,
want to do it. I'll get into it off there. So we went out there with an amazing group of students. Convention in Milwaukee was grad students. The convention in Chicago was mostly undergrads.
Oh, nice.
And so I had a couple people with me there that were BDJ, we call them, broadcasting digital journalism, that knew how to work a camera and knew how to set up. We did a live shot from the convention floor for WKTV, which is fantastic. I really love doing that. Some from outside the arena. So it was a really, really cool, we did an interview with Elise Stefanik on the floor, which was a little interesting.
So how did you get that interview with her? On the floor? Like, did you just do you reach out to her and try to plan it in advance, or you just take the cameraman and say, hey,
So,
we gotta get her?
It was a couple things. It actually, it's a really interesting way that things have worked out. So Brandon Williams' team has been exceedingly cooperative with me and my reporting for the past 4 to 5 months, which has been really interesting.
Yeah.
I've also been told that they may have some polling in their campaign that shows they're down by a little bit, which may explain some of it, but I'm never going to punish compliance. I'm grateful to them for doing that. And one of the folks in the congressman's office happened to be friendly with one of the folks in the congresswoman's office, Congresswoman Stefanik. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, would they like to do an interview while they're at the convention? Because Brandon Williams was not at the convention, but Elise Stefanik was, and she was speaking in prime time. And so one thing led to another, and she came out off of her speech, and her chief strategist there, Alex DeGrasse, said, well, no time for national media. We're going to do a minute and a half with local media. And so I had 90 seconds to ask her about things. And I didn't want it to be something where I'm playing patty cake. And so I said, listen, you spend all this time up there on the stage. What does that actually do for the folks back home? And I thought her answer to it was actually pretty strong. But it was an interesting,
What was her answer?
interesting conversation to have. I think she said that, first of all, she actually addressed it was their own tornado was happening at the time. And so she took the time to say that we were monitoring it. I called County Executive Pacenti, which I thought was really interesting, that she was at the convention preparing for her speech on national TV and took the time to call, the folks back home. Whatever you want to say about her politics, I think that's a really interesting way to act as a public servant. I think a commendable way to act as a public servant. But then also she said, look, it's important when I have district priorities that need to be done. When President Trump is in office, I have his cell phone number, and I can call him, and I can get get those things done. She got stuff done up at Fort Drum and on the Spoons Act and all the rest of it. And so, again, you can disagree with Donald Trump, you can disagree with Louis Stefanik, but it is legitimately helpful to have someone in office who has a national platform the way that Louis Stefanik does.
It sounds like you ask good questions too. That,
I try.
The people here that your viewers.
There's always a push and pull, I think, in journalism between accountability and access, right? And so, how much do I want to get another interview with Louis Stefanik? I'd love to. That'd be great. But also, if I do one interview with her and I don't hold her accountable and then I never see her again, like, what was the value in that? Well, I might as well have done no interview at all.
How do you weigh that? Like, how do you determine what is the right thing to do?
It's always a gray area, Ron. There's no black and white. You're always trying to figure it out. I asked John Mannion some questions a few months ago about the allegations that were made against him by some former staffers of having a toxic workplace.
I think that was at the station's Juneteenth thing.
It was.
It was that famous thing. We talked to we dissected that interview and his response on the show.
And I spoke to him at the July 4th parade and interviewed him briefly, but just what's it mean to be in Utica? Anything too searing, but I have not spoken to his campaign manager since then, and I've not been able to interview him
Nor
since then.
have we.
No, So, and again, I always welcome that. I thought that my questions were fair, and I wanted to give him the opportunity to respond. But there again, it's like, I felt my position in that, especially after having spoken to several of the staffers, was to hold him accountable and to hold his feet to the fire and see how he responded to that pressure. And he has responded in the way that he has responded. I think people will make their own decisions come November.
Right. One thing that was really hard for me when I began doing this, it was about 2018. And first I had done news in the 90s, but I had been a long time. I had been sick for many years of chronic fatigue and stuff. And so I found it very hard at first when I started to do the column to separate my own personal feelings from people I was writing about. And of course, in the Sentinel and the Clinton record at the time, it was a column, so it was a little bit more personal. But I found it really hard, I think, too. One of the things I found difficult with politicians is that, especially when I was new, 4 years ago, when I was doing this, I would think that they really were my friend. Like, they seem like they really like you, like you believe that, like you get so into it. Yeah. And how do you separate? How do you not be biased in your coverage? One thing, and how do you deal with that? Because it was hard for me at first.
I have always tried to serve the audience and not pander to them, right? Because I think I definitely have more of a left-leaning audience just because it's on Twitter and whatnot, and I think that's definitely balanced out more in recent years. But I think that there's definitely sometimes a left lean, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to hold people like John Mannion or Letitia James or Kristen Gillibrand or whoever I'm interviewing in that moment, or Chuck Schumer accountable. But I don't know. I think this access and accountability thing, I had come to fully accept the fact that when I got the Brandon Williams video of him berating a staffer, I had fully accepted by that point, if I posted that video, I may never see Brandon Williams again. I'm grateful that I have gotten the chance to interview him multiple times and pressed him on a lot of issues since then. And again, whether that's to do with his polling or the fact that he's taking more questions than other folks, that's to be seen. But I think
that's really part of the question too. Is lots of times, it seems like, especially when you are new, and actually I think you actually have more experience than I do in some ways at this. You really do feel like, oh, this person likes me as senator, as congressman, but they really kind of don't. And I think it was hard to I
don't know if I've ever gotten the sense that politicians like me.
I think I did, but I think I just felt
occasionally,
because I was you think, oh, this is great, and then then afterwards it's
I always try and be respectful and nice and cordial to everyone. And that doesn't mean, and I hope that people understand that when I'm asking a tough question, it's because I'm doing my job, and it's not because it's not because I'm actually trying to be a jerk. I just would like to know the answer to that question. And when you put yourself out there to run for office and to represent 800,000 people, then you should expect a little more scrutiny than perhaps maybe you're getting from other folks.
I think, but my question more is what do you do with the people that, I think it's harder with the politicians that you do like. I think that's the hardest part. How do you separate to make sure someone said this to me one time, a person who's in the media too. Not anymore. They used to be at the time, about 3 years ago. He said that sometimes in my work, especially with the early work, he could see that I kind of crossed the line into being more like someone's PR person than a journalist. And I can see that now. You know, but how do you stop yourself from doing that?
I think so. There are definitely politicians
Especially
that
when
I
you're
like on a personal level, like
Yeah.
as people.
Right.
Mark Molinaro would be an example of one of those, and
Yeah.
I've said this publicly before. I like
Right.
Mark Molinaro as a
And
person.
you can tell.
He has a child with a disability.
Yeah.
He works, I think he works across the aisle with folks. But if you watch my interviews with him, I am
Right.
exceedingly tough on him,
Right,
and
right.
sometimes potentially even more so because I
Yeah.
want to counterbalance that narrative, and also there are questions to ask him, and so I
Yeah.
think regardless of my personal impressions of any particular politician, and I certainly have many personal impressions of particular politicians, there is always a question to ask them. There always is, and there's
Right,
always a way
right.
to be adversarial and holding them accountable, but also respectful. And
right.
so for Mark, the question always comes back to, why are you supporting Donald Trump? That's always the
Yeah.
one that I go to because he talks so often about decency and politics and public
Right.
life, public service. And to me, again, just looking at things from a generalized factual view, Donald Trump has taken back some steps back in the decency of the public discourse. And
Yes,
I think
yeah.
that's a like pretty factual statement that all people
Yeah.
can agree on. And some people like that about him,
What
for
does
sure.
Mark Molinaro say about that?
So his answer usually has something to do with, yes, but I don't like the Biden administration's policies.
Right.
Which again,
most politicians, I think,
Yeah.
have like a set answer to a hard.
oh, and
question
he
too,
absolutely
so,
does.
Yeah,
And he's
yeah.
been in politics since he was 19 years old.
So
he
he
first
knows.
ran for mayor at 19. And so he is one of the more rehearsed politicians
Yeah.
out there. And you know what? I think
How do you get
Charlotte
around
does
that? Like, if you feel like
He's
someone's going
very
to answer
hard.
your question.
I follow up, which is something I think is done too rarely.
When do
People
you drop
come
the
in.
follow up? See, I was told at this
Yeah.
Sentinel that it's like to follow up, but then if they don't answer a second time, they're probably not going to, and you really like. It's kind of like, and I'm paraphrasing. This
Yeah.
was like 4 years ago. I was talking to the person who owns the Sentinel, publisher, and I think sort of what he was saying was kind of like, and other people said this too. Like, if they don't answer the question a second time,
Yeah.
that is your answer,
Sure.
and the audience knows that's the end. That's the
Absolutely.
answer.
I think, yes, I
Is
never
that when
want
you
to
drop it?
underestimate what the audience thinks and what they're able to pick up on. I think people pick up on non-answers. For example, the Manning
Yeah.
interview, I think people picked up on the fact that he was not directly answering that question.
They did, yes.
And I think that interview kind of spoke for itself.
Right,
On
right.
policy questions, when it comes to the personal stuff, I think dropping it after one or two is fine. There was a similar issue with the Brandon Williams video. There was some personal elements
Yeah,
there.
right.
And so I don't really need to get into that. I don't think
Right.
that's relevant to
Right.
his public service. For policy, I will be a little bit more persistent on following up.
Yeah,
Because there are actually factual answers to be given, and
Right.
I believe that politicians rely way too much on pre-rehearsed talking points when it comes to policy and broad generalizations. And so, I believe in a woman's right to choose is a great example of that. Like, you can
Yeah.
fully believe in that statement, but there are specific abortion policies that are out there that, the government has a responsibility or a role in. And so that was one of the main issues in the Democratic primary in the 22nd, right? Was where does John Mannion believe the line should be drawn? Where does Sarah Clay Hood believe the line should be drawn? Where does Brandon Williams believe that line should be drawn? And
How do you personally approach an issue like that? Because it's a very
yeah.
important issue to you. Because of your brother, many people do get
Yeah.
abortions if they find out that they're going to have a child who has Down syndrome. So because of that, I know it's really a very important issue to you. Also, you're a male, so it's not really going to affect you personally, your
Mhm.
body, and you're covering an issue that's so, people are so passionate about and so worked up about. How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of issues that are personal and important to everyone.
Actually,
right?
I think we have to go to another break. This conversation is so great. I
So
get so
good.
into this, I kind of forget about our break time. So,
Very good.
when we come back, I want to ask you about that. Like, how do you cover a story or person or an issue that you have very strong feelings about? And how do you check yourself to make sure that you're not inserting your bias into it, or you're not going too far with it? So we're going to ask Luke Radel that question when we get back after the break. You're on the hot seat. This is a Media Monday.
Yes, I am.
On 95.5 FM The Heat. This is Ron Klopfanstein, and you're on the hot seat on a Media Monday. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the hot seat on 95.5 FM The Heat. I'm Ron Klopfanstein, and my guest today is Luke Radel Luke, you just finished a great summer job, a really cool summer job. You're an anchor of WKTV News.
Fill-in anchor, Ron.
Fill-in anchor, but still.
I was a reporter.
That's a pretty cool job. You're a reporter, too.
This is no false advertising. This is a hot seat. This is really, I'm feeling it a little bit here.
Well, because
I'm in a suit, too. So
I know.
You're
the best dressed guest I've ever had on this show, I gotta say.
I do it for you, and then I maybe have an audition for a big job at the student TV station tonight.
Congratulations.
So hopefully I'll have an announcement out in the next couple days on my social media.
I'll look for that. We'll be sure to amplify that.
Yes, well, thank you.
So now, you go to journalism school.
I do.
You're going to be in your third year. So what do they teach you about dealing with issues that are like controversial or that are complex, or ones where there's a lot of strong emotion in the audience, but also in you as a reporter?
Yeah, you always have to come at it from a standpoint of facts first, right? So that's the most important thing, is that you need to be someone who is telling the story, but not necessarily always telling your story. But then everybody does have a story, right? And so you want to be, knowing what your story is and what your biases are, and checking your bias and understanding where you come from and how your experiences have shaped perhaps your pre-existing views or positions on a certain issue. But then also, I think the biggest lesson that I've learned, not just from journalism school, but from working job this summer and being in this industry for the past 7 years, is the fact that it's a lot more about listening than it is about talking. And that's why, it's fun to talk to you and to be interviewed, but I really love doing the interviews because I get to listen to people and hear their stories. And you know what? Maybe their experiences don't match up with mine, or their takeaways from those experiences don't match up with the takeaways that I've had and from my life experiences. But that doesn't make their life experiences any less valid, right? So everybody's going through their own different interesting stories, and I want to be the one to tell those stories, and I don't really need to insert my own personal views on things in order to tell that story, especially if it's a story about politics, where there are usually facts and things that we can go based off of, right? So I don't try and nibble around the edges of, is abortion right or wrong or moral or immoral. I want to know, where do these candidates stand on the issue and why, right? So if John Mannion tells me, of course there should be restrictions on abortion, as he did, I want to know why he feels that way. And I want to know why Syracuse could disagree with him. And I want to know why Brandon Williams feels the way that Brandon Williams feels, right? Is it his faith? Is it, well, whatever it may be, I want to know why that is. It really has very little to do with my personal take on it. It's just, I want folks to know, when they're going to the polls, everything they can possibly know about why this politician feels the way they feel on the issues. And sometimes politicians try to hide that, and I don't think that's right.
How does a good journalist or a producer, editor, how do they decide what the line is between getting both sides, or how do you determine whether you should get whether there is both sides to get, or whether trying to get both sides goes into just whataboutism, where you're trying to get both sides of an issue that really doesn't, say for example in this, maybe this is maybe putting words in your mouth, I don't mean to, but with Molinaro, with, you ask him about how can you support someone like Trump if he's all about decency and stuff. So is there a point where if you're doing a story on something like that, where you almost, do you feel I feel like some of these reporters feel they almost have to pretend that there's a compelling argument of why, say, Trump isn't indecent, no matter what you feel about him. Sometimes I feel reporters sometimes, say with climate change, go so far to try to say, well, maybe climate change isn't real.
I haven't seen that from reporters. I think reporters, particularly on climate change, have been very good about that.
Maybe it's more with politics. I'm thinking about the New York Times lately. They've been so anti-Democrat, on the New York Times. They were savage to Joe Biden, and it seems like they find whatever they possibly can to attack and undermine the Democratic side. And I wonder if they're just going to why?
I'll give you a metaphor from a professor that I had last semester. His name's Chris Lake. He used to be the CEO of CNN. He's the one that set up the Trump town hall, and then got fired for it.
What's his name?
Chris Lake is his name.
Oh,
He's a Syracuse University alum.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he was my professor last semester. Yeah, he taught a class called The Future of Media. But he had an expression that, about who would be allowed on CNN and who wouldn't be. Yeah. And he eventually kind of waffled on this expression. But anyways, I like Chris a lot. He's a good guy. But the idea generally is that some people like rain, some people don't like rain.
Right.
But I won't have anyone on my network that says it's not raining when it is.
Oh,
right?
I
So you'll have people on all day long that like
Right.
rain and don't like rain and have them debate and go back and forth about that. But if
Right.
somebody's going to get on air and tell you that it's not raining when it definitely is,
Yeah.
then that's not a person that you should be taking seriously.
So you just stick to the facts.
You stick to the facts, and then if you want to talk about people's differences of opinion about tax cuts or
Yeah,
about
yeah.
abortion policy or about all these things, that's fine. But then once it gets into the realm of things that are not factual, things that are not accurate, climate change is fake, or the election was stolen,
Right,
or
right.
whatever you want to get to.
Right.
That is where you start saying, okay, this person's not coming on anymore. This person's not adding to the discussion, not
Yeah.
adding to the dialogue, and also hurting our reputation as a news organization. Right. Our job is to present.
them.
Our job is to present the facts and then also the perspectives on those facts. But you can't have alternative facts as much as
Right,
Kellyanne
right.
might want them.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you learn in journalism school? Because I've been to college. I've been to too much college, I would say, but I've never taken a journalism class, and I wonder, like,
Yeah.
what is it? Of course, like, as a college student at all, like, we're drummed into our heads about honesty and citations and integrity and all this stuff. And
Right.
when you do a term paper, you can only present the facts.
Right.
But, like, what are some of the things that you specifically learn at such a prestigious journalism school that you go to?
Yeah, I love the way the Newhouse curriculum is set up, because so each year you kind of peel back a different layer of the kind of journalism onion, if you will. And so, the first year you were learning just how to tell stories, right? And how to put together stories, how to edit on Premiere, which is always fun to do the video editing, and then also how to write. And so you're learning how to write directly. News writing, news copy is very different from academic writing or from fiction writing,
so?
poetry. You're focused on being very direct. You're always speaking in the present tense if you're in broadcast. It's in the
Okay.
past tense if it's print. So, on Sunday, President Joe Biden flew to Delaware,
Okay.
as opposed to, and President Joe Biden is staying in Delaware this weekend. So that's
I
that's
see.
more of that's the
Like
difference
more
between print and
immediate.
TV. Right. The
Yeah.
TV is always immediate. You're always talking about what's happening now. We call it new, now, next. And so you start with what's new, what the new information is, and you
Yeah.
lead with that, and then what's happening now. You set
Yeah.
the picture, and then you preview at the end to what's coming next. So if you listen to your next news story, you'll probably hear that new, now, next if you divide it up.
Yeah,
Into what's happening new, what's happening now, what's happening next. So that's kind of the first year, my freshman year. You really don't do a whole lot of getting behind a microphone. You're not talking, you're listening, you're writing, you're learning how to do all that stuff. My sophomore year, we did radio and podcasts. And so you're figuring out how to put together
What do you learn about radio?
Radio is
What do you
really
have to know to
interesting.
host a radio show?
What do you
Nobody
have to
ever
know?
told me, so I
You figured it out. You've done pretty good for
I
yourself.
hope I'm doing okay.
You've done pretty good for yourself, yeah. It's delivery, it's the speed with which you're talking in your voice, and then also continuing to learn how to write, continuing to
Yeah,
learn how to
right.
stack a story. You're for our purposes, you're editing together. Radio, they call them wraps. In TV, we call them packages, and so that's the story.
So what would a rap be?
lay in? It's about a minute long. You lay in
The whole news story.
Correct. You lay in interviews, you lay in what they call nat sound, which is environmental sounds. So if I did one outside right now, you'd probably have a couple birds chirping or somebody riding a bicycle, something of that nature, to fill the story, because you don't have the visuals
Right.
in the radio story, and so
Right.
you have to use a lot more of that nat
Yes.
sound. You'll still find that, though, in TV.
I think I have an example of that. I did a story for here about the way that the local media covered the shooting of Not Way, and I interviewed some people at
What did you think about that?
one of the vigils. Well, I interviewed some people at the, it wasn't the Candlelight Vigil, it was the march that was at the Vail by Ellis Center, the Parkway Center down to, and I interviewed some people that there was some young people talking about how the media didn't give full coverage of who he was. And so what I did when I put that together is I did put some of the sound from the event itself underneath it, because I think I played out here, but it was just, it was audio, there's no video. So,
Yeah.
so
No.
you do have to add, I was surprised that I thought of that. I'm glad that I did,
Oh, yeah.
because
it's all in purpose of telling the story. Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you want to communicate it across.
What's the difference between a podcast and a radio show? Like, what did they teach you the differences?
So I think podcasts were kind of a thing that came about for
I
digital
know what
space,
they
right?
are.
So it was more for the iPods and stuff. A lot of times podcasts are pre-taped, not always, but most of
Right.
the time. Radio shows are typically live, as we are right now.
Yes.
And have kind of more regular commercial breaks. So kind of like the difference between a TV show and a YouTube video, right?
Right,
So
right.
it's just more so about medium and less so about the actual way in which you're
It seems like
communicating.
one of the main things with podcasts is that I'm a big podcast fan, and like when I go to sleep, I listen to podcasts as I fall asleep.
Me too.
And there's a lot of really good ones. iHeartMedia and Wondery is a good.
Do you listen to Pod
company.
Save America?
No, I actually
met
listen
all
to
those
things.
guys. They're fantastic.
I actually like to listen to things that have nothing to do with politics or
That's
anything
fair.
that all would make me anxious as I sleep.
I'm such a political brain. I have
So I
to
listened to
do it
this
all day.
really cool one called Business Wars. I
Okay.
just finished KB versus Toys R Us and like
Nice.
a series of, but I feel like
Company Man's another good YouTube channel. If you like
Really?
that, that's a
Oh,
really
I'll have to
good.
look
I
for that.
love. They have really good.
I feel like one of the differences between radio and podcasting is that I think in radio, one of the things that I like about it is that it is more disciplined. You have a time slot.
Sure.
And I think one of the things that, like, if I listen to a new podcast, a new podcaster, one of the things that I don't like to hear, and I sort of like look at it, is how far do I have to scroll in before it actually starts?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times with podcasts, I feel like there's a lack of discipline
Sure.
where they talk for like endless about like stuff because they're just friends or hanging out doing this.
I love
like,
rules. I love rules. I think rules are really great. As you
In
know,
media, I think it's
was
good.
independent and had a YouTube channel for a long time,
Right,
and
right.
was pretty disciplined about it. Right, I would set up. You
Yeah.
know, I had 2020 Tuesdays with my series for a while, and then
Yeah.
I would do something every week. But I needed rules. I needed discipline like that.
Right.
After I got sick, I got a little less disciplined and stopped doing it as much. But now with the TV, with the student-run TV or the WKTV, it's a lot more disciplined. I'm
Yeah.
responding to bosses. I'm turning things on a deadline, and I think I respond a lot better to that. And I think you're able to tell better stories if you have to put it within the deadline and cut things and take out
I think so,
lines and
too.
not be
Yes.
redundant. And so
Right.
I've really liked having rules and having parameters and guidelines. Doesn't mean I'm not on YouTube. I still occasionally come out of my hole and put something up there. I listened to Christy Noem's audiobook and did a review of that got about 30,000 views, which was pretty fun.
Good for you. That's
yeah,
really
it was
great.
It was
Yeah.
awesome, but I had a really nice time with that. But
I think that's a good question too. Like, how do you balance between like what the audience wants
Mhm.
and what you should be giving them as a professional in the field? Like, for example, I started doing TikTok about back in the spring, about the time I was up for the journalism award.
Mhm. Congratulations.
Thank you. Really proud of that.
I know.
happy about
It's
that.
great.
Most yeah, things.
I mean, I did also win Best Weather Award. I don't know if anybody saw my weather.
Congratulations!
Great.
Isn't it great to? I mean, it really.
It's
is.
nice to be great.
It's so much work.
It's not what we do it for, but it's right.
No, but it is nice,
Yeah.
especially like when it's
Trophies
good
are fun.
that validation to it. For
Yes.
me, it's really important. So
Especially from colleagues.
Yeah. So what is it going? It's such a good question. Now I've lost it, but
I flattered him
was
about
gonna
the
ask
award
you.
and got him knocked off.
It's not like it's
How do you
something with
respond when you
podcasts
like
and
people
stuff.
that you're interviewing, Ron?
I
I don't
know.
know. How do you respond in that scenario?
That was like the hardest thing for me when I first started out.
Yeah.
I think because I didn't know what to do. Like I just got this column, and so I kind of like connected with the.
Is that how you
producing
felt when you were
committee.
interviewing Claudia? Was that you just
Well,
liked
that
her
was.
too much?
I felt like it was kind of that was the whole thing like the
The
opposite.
inverse.
I felt like I got so much into that. You know,
Sure.
like that afterwards, like I felt like
I saw her for the first time in 4 years
you did.
at the Republican convention.
Did she say hi?
She did say hi.
She did say hi.
She didn't realize that I was still in school, allegedly. I don't know. You never
Yeah,
know.
I'll say that's strong
But I think I've told you this before. She gave a very nice speech on the House floor. My grandpa passed. She was friends
Yes,
with my
you
grandpa.
told me that. Yes.
And
Yeah,
it meant a lot to us, meant a lot to the
Yeah.
family for her to do that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been 4 years. I still hold a candle that someday she'll do an interview with me. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
I
More
never say
likely
never.
you than me.
The fact that I got Brandon Williams after that video, like I don't know, I believe I can do anything, but she has little less incentive to do it because she's in a very safe district. But
It
anyway,
seems like a very weird congressional.
she's gonna be happy that we're talking about it.
Oh,
She's a big fan of yours.
She
Chelsea
complained
Kloppy.
about me. Oh my gosh!
She's gonna start texting Cassandra again.
She used to tweet the Rome Sentinel about me.
She did. She tweeted about me too. That's okay.
See, now I
She
lost
had nothing better to
another
do.
question.
She called Nikila. She called Nikila for like a half an hour before the 2020 election. Anyways,
About you?
bygones. Yes. Do you remember that? Oh my goodness.
I know.
She's starting to sue me. She said, he's 16. I'm going to
That
sue
was
him. And then the
my
day I turned
column.
18, I was waiting for my lawsuit. and
to be served.
it's been 2 years. I'm still waiting, Claudia. I don't know. I actually don't sue me because I have a lot of bills.
Luckily,
to pay.
she forgot about you. Maybe she forgot about you. She probably has people out there that she.
That's true. No, she does. I've seen. I keep tabs. It's like an ex, you know.
But
You gotta
doesn't
keep
it seem
tabs. See
weird
what they're
though,
doing
like
now.
that we're actually in a congressional race right now,
Yeah.
and like so little is happening. Like usually, these races, like the
These
last
races are
year,
kind of boring.
10
I gotta be honest.
easy-
And they
I
were
know,
2
right.
years ago too. And again,
I
it's
know,
also
yeah, right.
again, they're not boring. They're nice people. Anyways,
But it's not like
whatever.
the fireworks.
They're
You know,
also
like
they're not here. They're not
That's
from
the
here,
thing.
and they're not here.
Right,
Because
right.
this Utica is now 15% of the district. It used to be the center of the district.
Yeah.
And so...
Wait, it's 15%?
15% of the district.
You mean voters?
Yes.
So like the balance, the imbalance.
That's why Syracuse had lost her primary.
So the imbalance, the number of voters, we have 15%.
And I think Onondaga has about 70%.
I had no idea it was that unbalanced.
Oh yeah.
Well, no wonder it doesn't matter.
Because the Utica, if you remember, the old NY22 was 8 counties. Like it was a big district.
Binghamton.
It was
the
It was Utica
city,
and Binghamton, and that's how they filled up that 800,000.
It seemed like it was more balanced then. You know.
I liked it. I liked it better. But
Yeah.
I think it's more convenient for me now though because I'm at Syracuse,
True,
so I'm able to have one district, which is nice. But it was more balanced, and again, we knew the people better, right? Because they were from around here. I also, if it became a Utica Center district, I don't know who would run around here. I really don't.
True.
I think that there is also a dearth, because we've not had a lot of attention on us, I think there's a dearth of political talent. Maybe Mike Galimi throws his hat there. I don't know. But I think that would make some people a little upset. But anyways, it's sad. And that was one of the things I said the morning after the election.
Remember how exciting it was when it was Tenny and Brindisi? It was just so exciting. It was like King Kong and Godzilla. You know, it was like this great epic thing. And now it's like, oh yeah, that's happening.
That's happening.
I never think about it. You know?
No, I know. And hopefully these debates will be good. I got upset about one of the debates the last time, and I made it known on air. That was the other thing is I was grateful. There were a couple of times, particularly with the political stuff, they gave me some leeway to be a little bit more personality infused.
Yeah.
And that was after the Syracuse.com debate. I was pretty furious because it was pretty poorly run, and we did not get any sense of where the candidates stood. If you remember, they had them hold up numbers for how radical left they are, and I was like, oh, I just hate this. And then the morning after the election, or the night after the election rather, I went on air and I said that the victory of John Mannion over Syracuse proves that Utica's influence in congressional politics is dead. And again, it's nothing against John Mannion, but he lost Oneida County by 45 points.
And we were pretty sure, and we wanted her. I mean,
and the numbers showed that in Oneida County. The numbers showed that in Oneida County, and it didn't matter because he won in Onondaga by 35 points. Now, she should have done a lot more work in Onondaga County. Let's be very clear. But he also has a big advantage there with unions and with just his name ID. He was sending out mailers to his 50th Senate district, and so again, that's his right.
He was sending out mailers to me in my district. I'm not in his district. I was sure.
They
I wasn't too thrilled.
Everything always finds its way into the mailbox, but it was really sad. I thought that somebody needed to sound the alarm, and to do it on WKTV I think was a really important thing to do, because that's a lot of, and that was the thing that really shocked me. Because I watch local news, I watch KTV, but a lot of people watch. A lot of people watch WKTV, which I was really grateful for, because it meant a lot to have people come up to me and say, "Oh, hey."
Oh, it must have been exciting. What was it like? Like, did you get a lot? You must have got a lot of feedback.
A ton. It was so strange, because I'd be at dinner and then people would be looking, and I'd be like, "Hi, hey, hello," and it's not anything
cool.
And it's different from I got to meet Anderson Cooper this week.
I saw that,
and that's different
and
because
young Sheldon too.
Oh, I know, that was fun.
And
he's but he's in New York, and he's relatively sheltered, and there's also a lot of famous people in New York. Your local news anchor is like, you'll see Bill Curtis in Hannaford. He's there. He's around. So it's different because we don't get paid the money to be like out there and in front of people, which is fine. I'm very grateful to be at the job. But we are very accessible, but also we're there every night, and we're on your screen. I always appreciate it.
People recognize me and talk
It's great.
to me stuff.
It's great, and people I think really appreciated the story about Mark, which I was grateful for, and some of the stories that I did.
Tell us a bit before we wrap up here. Tell us a bit about this story about your brother.
Yeah, so my brother is the first.
It's an important part of who you are.
It's fundamental.
Your advocacy.
I would not be here if it was not for him, because he's the reason why I got into journalism, advocating for people like him. That I want to make a difference in the world, and I think one of the best ways to do that is as a journalist. I think it's a really important profession, and
how can you make a difference as a journalist?
So I think we need politicians who are thoughtful and who are substantive and are able to deal with the issues of our time. And frankly, I don't really care what party they're in. As long as they're substantive and they're able to deal with these issues that we have on our plate, issues of education, issues of healthcare, all the rest of it, that'll help my brother live and thrive and survive for a long, long life and a happy life, that's good enough for me. And I think good enough for everybody, right? I think everybody should have that ability. So I am really grateful to have this job and to be advocating for him. But yeah, he was the first student with Down syndrome to graduate from high school here in the Mohawk Valley with a full diploma and crossed the stage.
Amazing.
And now
Yeah.
he's had his first day of classes today at Syracuse.
In
So
Syracuse.
looking forward to it.
So congratulations, Mark. You know,
Yes, indeed. Hey,
congratulations,
he's listening. Thank
And
you.
congratulations to you too. You've
Thanks.
done so much and so quickly.
Next time we gotta talk about cancer. It'll be
There's
fun.
so much we can talk.
We got an
about.
upbeat
Yes,
conversation to do
I
next
know,
time around when I come into the hot
This was
seat.
a great interview. Though.
Well,
So
thank you.
Thank you for being in the hot seat.
I appreciate you.
So this has been the hot seat
Thanks for having me.
on a Media Monday. My guest was Luke Radel. Luke just wrapped up his summer job at WKTV. We hope that he'll be back for that. And now I'm going to kick things over to Jay Easy for the Easy Ride Home.